A heart leader has these values and virtues of love at the center, truth, authenticity, goodness.
You're opening yourself to the field of infinite potentiality.
This is the spiritualized leadership, in my opinion. This is getting people in touch with the deeper parts of themselves, and then they express out into the world.
Every cell has its own vibration, has its own frequency. Even the ones that are dying off have a purpose.
When your cells are vibrating with more life energy, your capacity to handle more goes up substantially.
Such a privilege to be able to experience yourself at all of these stages, all of these layers.
Although we can experience attachment in human form, we are not the things that we are attached to. Through loss and suffering, life teaches us that.
Hi, I'm Amber Mikesell, founder of Suivera, host of the Heart Leader podcast, and author of this amazing book, Silence Your Inner Critic. And I'm excited to share that this awesome little guide is now available for pre-order. You can head on over to silenceyourinnercritic.com and pre-order your copy now. Or you can pop on over to wherever you enjoy ordering books, like Barnes & Noble, and just type in the title, Silence Your Inner Critic, and find your copy there. As soon as you place your pre-order, send us a copy, a digital screenshot, or just a notification showing us your receipt, and email that over to info, I-N-F-O, @suivera.org, and brace yourself for a lot of amazing gifts from me over the course of the next few weeks as you wait for your copy to arrive in the mail. I can't wait to start this epic journey with you. Well, I want to start rolling with it by saying thank you for being here for your third flow on the Heart Leader podcast, because we just can't get enough chatting with you. If somebody has not watched our episodes with Dr. Anthony Balduzzi, is there something you can share with them, just like a little nugget about you that you think a member of Suivera or the Heart Leader community should know about you?
Well, maybe the roles that I play and show up as a heart leader would be helpful.
Yeah.
I am a dad to my daughter Brooke. She's almost 3 years old. I play the role of an entrepreneur. I have 2 companies. One's called Fit Father Project, and the other is Fit Mother Project. I've been doing those companies for 10 years. They help moms and dads get healthy for themselves and their families. And through that process of running those companies, I've been on a spiritual journey of learning how to express myself and my great truths, how to develop programs and material that really impact people's lives, how to organize people around focus and goals and vision. And I spend my time with these companies, like growing them to help more people. I got into health and fitness because I lost my dad at a young age. He died from cancer when he was 42 years old, and I was 9. And that set my life on a trajectory centered around studying health because I realized how important it was. And I have learned a lot in my life, both through how the physical body becomes strong and in contrast gets weak, but also how it's a complete spiritual journey and that all of this creation is for the deepest part of ourselves. We use many words. The soul might be one of those. Yeah. So, I mean, those are some highlights. I'll also say I'm a licensed naturopathic doctor. So I practice the kind of holistic medicine that's based in nutrition, natural law, circadian rhythm, proper supplementation, these types of things. And I am a budding student of electromagnetism because I believe that that's like the scientific basis of why all the things that work. And my soul is drawn to understand that more.
Which is why my soul is drawn to your soul. I love all of these things. So absolutely. And I love how you put it as your role is all of these things. Not you are these things, but your role. Can you share like why you use that differentiation? Because I have a sense that this is why you do it, but I want to hear from you why.
Yeah, I think, well, it's from the realizations I've had on my spiritual path. Like the I am statement is perhaps the great declaration of calling anything into being. I am blank. I am embodying this. And through my own journey of healing, meditation, psychedelic therapies, I have understood my being on a deeper level beyond all of these things. I have understand and feel the heart of myself as an offspark of the great consciousness that people call God. Um, I have also experienced myself through many changes and phases. So I both play in the relative of what I'm doing now, what is naturally interesting, and I also feel the vastness of myself as the continuum beyond all of this. My current phase now, the phase I'll experience at the end of this life, and even beyond this life. So it is something I think that is important for people to understand when they introduce themselves. They're using language that is a reflection of maybe their deeper understandings of truth, and they can reinforce things and identities that can create a lot of pain. Because although we can experience attachment in human form, we are not the things that we are attached to. And through loss and suffering, life teaches us that, or at least it can.
Yes. But there's also focus on how we show up in those roles,
Hmm.
which I think is going to be a beautiful thing for us to dive into because we chatted a little bit before we started rolling about what it means to be a heart leader and how you can show up in the roles as a heart leader because that is something fundamentally that you can interweave
Yes.
through all of the roles.
Yes.
So, when we say heart leader, what does that mean to you as a basis to even interweave between the roles, right?
Yeah.
Because we would all have our own definition for what that even means. So, what does it mean to you?
I was actually thinking about this today in prep for our conversation.
Awesome.
A heart leader, in a simple way to describe it, feels to me that it has these values and virtues of love at the center. It has this value and virtue of truth, authenticity, goodness. What I'll say is, I think at the end path of all these spiritual traditions, you arrive at a state of being that is joyful, that is compassionate, that is accepting, that is powerful. And that seems like just the derivative, like where you get when you get to know yourself, you experience your vastness. You fall into trust and realize that things are unfolding in a way that you are supported like divinely. So the end path of these religions, a heart leader is embodying those qualities like centrally, like those emanate from the true center of how you end up being as you get deeper down the path. Because you don't become more anxious, more fearful, more distracted. You become more present, more loving, more joyful. Why is that? It's just the way it is. It's just how it is. It's just like truly the design. So a heart leader is becoming in touch with those qualities as yourself. So it's a self-discovery, self-knowing, and then expressing from that center in all that you do. And maybe the contrast to a heart leader might be like, you could say a mind leader, but I don't want to villainize the mind. It's the interface tool that we have. It'd probably be like an ego leader. It
Yes.
would be,
Love that.
yes, it would be an ego leader, which means your motivations would not be coming from this internal central place of goodness and love that you don't have to spend any energy generating. It's just, it's there. It's the isness. It's coming. It's always full. But from the egoic perspective, it is rooted in a painful, twisted narrative, a lack of something that led you to overcompensate, being trapped in some kind of illusion of anything in the world, grabbing sex, grabbing money, grabbing more, which is always rooted in some feeling of scarcity. And so it's for those that are not awake, that just might be like the personality, or just like leadership 1.0. But this is the spiritualized leadership, in my opinion. This is getting people in touch with the deeper parts of themselves, and then they express out into the world. And this is also why in any role that we play, being a heart leader is just like the background operating system and something you can train at and get better at. I know in my spiritual path, like there are certainly flares of all those egoic patterns that I now welcome in the heart leader context. It's like, oh, that's still there. I get to choose this. So maybe that's an answer.
It's a great answer. It's like a workout for the soul
Yeah,
in many ways.
for
It's like,
sure.
there it is. Oh, well, I get to work through that again.
Hmm.
But I say work in this way of almost like the fun of getting to go to a great workout.
Yeah.
It's not like drudgery. It's like that excitement of, wow, okay, I get to do this. That's
Hmm.
amazing. So,
Something that comes up when you say that is as a heart leader is one who's operating from a place of spaciousness and consciousness as opposed to reactivity. Like even if those same central virtues and values of goodness are at the middle, I know that I am at my worst when I have created time constraints for myself, when too much is on my plate, when I'm running around and binging, and it just gets you into this kind of reactive, habitual way of thinking and operating. Like a heart leader is what you just described is you are understanding yourself in the vastness that when these things arise, you are still sitting in this seat of feeling all of it and understanding that you're not reacting, as you like to say, responding. So a heart leader almost centrally could be that meta practice of being in such personal spaciousness that you are responding consciously to everything. And when you do, the easiest thing to do is love and compassion and truthfulness. It requires no work because it's aligned with the natural fabric of the universal structure as I understand it. Anything else that's deviant from that required some kind of energy output or pain or contraction that you had to add into the mix. And we do this when we're rushed. We don't do this when we have all the space and the time.
I agree. So when we look at your roles that you mentioned, because you wear a lot of hats,
Yeah.
and I know so many people do who are listening to our podcast, right? We have the career hat that we wear,
Hmm.
whatever that is. And then you mentioned your amazing daughter, Brooke. Oh my gosh, little cutie pie. And she's young, she's little. It's not as though she can go and make herself dinner and take care of herself and put herself to bed.
Yeah.
So there is the focus that's required as a parent to be there and show up for her.
Hmm.
Then you have the rest of your family that
Hmm.
you're very close to. And you guys, I know you take vacations together and things like
Hmm.
that. So you have all of this that's in motion on top of a social life, on top of,
Hmm.
consistently educating yourself as
Hmm.
you do as a doctor. So how do you show up in each of these segments and all of the hats that you wear and be a heart leader? Because there's like tactical, practical things
Hmm.
that people are like, how do I do that? My
Yeah.
kid's crying and I'm at work and I'm failing
Yeah.
everywhere around.
For sure. And this is like the art of living and the art of like high performance living in the sense that you have a lot of things on your plate and you want to infuse them with love and excellence. I think that one of my main superpowers is that I've cultivated decades of great health. And I want to say that as a blanket statement. Like when you get healthier cardiometabolically, when your cells are vibrating with more life energy, your capacity to handle more goes up substantially. And so does your actual functioning of your brain, your intellect is a big important factor. So anything that you can do to move into high quality nutrition that is creating energy in your body without the symptoms of crashes or gas or bloating or inflammation, like nail that, good. I also think the circadian rhythm is so important, which means yes, total number amount of sleep, but I would also say for a heart leader, the routine on bookends of sleep, heading into sleep and waking up from sleep. And I think that there's probably a lot of optimization for people in the nighttime transition out of the day into the subconscious period of the sleeping and the processing, setting up for the next day. So there's a rhythm that we can certainly go into deeper there, but that container of health, I think, is the first thing. And maybe we'll pause there because the discussion is deep on the other layers.
Yeah, I think definitely advice. We get so many questions in our inbox about insomnia and why can't I shut off my brain? Desire to be in my heart. I can't get there. I don't even know what that would mean because my brain won't shut up. I have this negative voice in my head that is relentless. So, when you talk about that before you go to sleep routine,
Hmm.
how could that impact just getting that voice to maybe quiet down long enough to get that sleep?
Well, for sure. I mean, It comes down to having some kind of presence practice in whatever way that looks.
Okay.
For someone with a very active mind who doesn't have a lot of training in these mindfulness practices, it could be throwing on a very relaxing, soothing sound that can give the mind something to rest into. So all these frequencies are great for that kind of thing. It could be reading a particular book that makes someone feel present and connected. It could be traditional prayer time. For me, it's sitting in a chair, like a straight back chair that I have in my room. That's a dedicated spot that I end my day before transitioning into sleep, to sit in what now feels for me like joyful presence, and whatever comes up, and it's a great ritual. I'm not as concerned about answering how the person who is in that state can fix that, because if they commit to whatever practice they insert into that slot, if there is a nightly practice, in 1 year, all of that will be changed. It changes on its own when we add spaciousness and presence and recognize that like these are kind of sacred times in our awareness. And if we can have some kind of habit for processing, it could be basically like anything. It's kind of like, this is a time to exercise. You could go row, you could go on the elliptical, you could do push-ups. Choose whatever one feels good, but like if you do it, you will improve. And that's why I think an evening mindfulness practice is probably even more important than a morning one. And so hear me out.
Uh-huh.
In this time of like the day when we don't properly unwind, process, and do it consciously, what we do over the course of the night is typically subconsciously ruminate on these tangles and webs of attachment and pain that we had from the day before, which is setting ourselves up again subconsciously the next day for stress, anxiety, unresolved tension that then gets thrown and shot out this cannon of like the next day of your life, let alone with all the family pressures that come with having kids. And then you're always in this reactive cycle. Some of the greatest, most effective humans of all time have had practice of effectively setting the subconscious environment before going to bed, doing a reflection on what happened that day, what was learned, maybe even like consciously releasing tension in the body through some breathing practice and saying, it's okay. Like what happened today, in fact, it happened and it was maybe even perfect. And then what do I want to experience through this dream state? Like, what is the intention here? What do I want to do tomorrow? You're just planting healthier soil that everything else starts to work better. And so we're talking from more of like a fundamental environment standpoint first. And I think that's probably the biggest thing, because our days in this 3D are an experience of time. Like, sun goes around, we have a 24-hour cycle, we have a sleep and we have a wake. So if we can just first off optimize this one first gear, which is the gear rhythm of waking and sleeping, and then how we can gracefully transition through those phases, everything else upstream is going to get better. That's why we don't start with tactics, you start with a foundation. And I threw health in there too, because the body cycles through this is a big thing too. You're eating the wrong kinds of foods, too many stimulants, like good luck. You've changed the physiology in such a way that it cannot operate naturally.
Yeah. Nothing can get through.
Right.
So even new ideas, everything is just like bottlenecked
Yes.
because your body can't do anything else. It's in survival.
Let alone eating the wrong foods at night, and your whole digestive system is in knots. All the blood flow goes to GI tract. You're hot. It's inflamed. And this is why I think a lot of the great yogic traditions like certainly advise people not to eat heavy meals too late at night, and knows that it reliably leads to stirring up the mind into oftentimes agitated sleep. New longevity guy exploded on the scene, Brian Johnson. He's spending millions of dollars optimizing his body. He's got this blueprint stuff.
Yeah.
The number one like longevity hack that he's discovered after millions of dollars spent is that he eats dinner at like 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock and doesn't push food. So just bringing that up as a small subtle note that the late night eating has an impact on this whole thing. The spiritual traditions where they advise fasting,
Yes.
people typically feel lighter and clearer and less reactive. And there's a big tie between the digestive system, the nervous system, and then what we feel in terms of our mental, emotional space.
And so all you're recommending is to do the same thing with your energy, really.
Yes.
Before bed, is to digest all the thoughts, all the energy that
Beautiful.
you had for the day.
Yes.
And not go to bed with that heavy, energetic meal sitting
Yes.
on your psyche.
Yes. Yes. And for sure. And you're never going to fully relax when you haven't done that processing. And it could be as simple as like you could actually close loops with tasks and projects too mentally, maybe even just creating your to-do list for the next day. So there's that tactical level, and then there's the deeper emotional processing level. Do it all. It can be 2 minutes, and maybe even more effective than someone who's stressed out about not experiencing enlightenment at night during their 10-minute audio meditation. This is far more helpful.
Yes. And it gives you the space the next morning to wake up with that clean slate to prepare for your day
Hmm.
versus thinking, oh, I have all yesterday to process and I have to think about today.
Correct. And then the morning could be as simple as drinking your water and setting an intention. Or it could be a more elaborate practice if that feels great for you. It's a
Yeah.
perfect time to do at least one thing that you would say is self love and self care. So for me, that is a morning meditation practice. For other people, that might be a morning workout. Before you get to this point as a parent and as oftentimes as a leader, where you're putting a lot of other people's needs at the forefront, this is one sacred time that there's no reason that you wouldn't do one awesome thing for yourself. So, whatever that is, insert it. It could be anything. But that will start every day where you are feeling nourished because you're choosing you and you're choosing what is healthy. And what is healthy is what we want to do naturally.
I love that. So you improve sleep because you've processed all this energy. You can even set, as you said, what you desire to even dream about.
Yes.
So that's opening you up when we talk about it in the quantum state.
Yep.
Like you're opening yourself to the field of infinite potentiality.
Yes.
So even if you just say, I would like to pull in
Mhm.
whatever from the field of infinite potential that would help me for tomorrow,
Mhm.
even if you don't know what you pulled in, you've
Yep.
still set yourself up well because you don't have all this crap that you're processing.
Yes.
And now you're ready to go for the next day. You get up, you do what you just said, have your water, you get yourself set in a positive way to move through your day. You've started out from the heart center as a heart leader.
Mhm. You did. And now you have this framework for helping you do that better. And
Yeah.
it's a great quote from Walter Russell, who is a scientist that people need to know more of. He lived in 1900s, and this was a practice that he did. Not surprisingly, I think Einstein also, or Edison also did this practice, this evening kind of like setting intention. He says that most people spend their lives working on some external machine. It's their job, it's their family life, it's their investment account, it's external. Whereas the really dynamic humans are actually spending all that energy improving the being behind all the creations. And this is this process. This is this daily process where you're actually doing the work on yourself. And then the outputs are going to change by themselves. And this is why you could spend 20 years and build a great company or an impactful thing, but not feel fulfilled and have deficiency. I think from the person who really touches this center that we're talking about, like embodied heart leader at a high level, and is centering on that in their daily rituals and routines, what you will see is that almost all of these things in all of their other areas are reflecting that same level of goodness and performance because it must be so. It's coming from this central core of of power and goodness, not just I have propped up this area with a lot of time and energy and resource and attention at the deficiency of everything else. So balance is a byproduct of unlocking this personal power through these practices and whatever else people hear on this podcast.
That's amazing. So if I get my body, get my sleep regulated, my circadian rhythm is in flow, I'm eating according to my circadian rhythm, which
Mhm.
I am a huge proponent of
Mhm.
myself. So my inflammation is going down and my body is feeling better.
Mhm.
Do you have any advice to regulate mental, emotional, or energetic as
Mhm.
well in the same flow for some heart leader centered approaches? Because I know, and I think we talked about this right before, we've had individuals who have reached out and said, it's really hard because I work from home and I desire to be a heart leader for my family and my kids, but also in my business. And when they clash, when those worlds clash, I
Mhm.
could be doing really well. But then I have this emotional reaction when everything else is having an emotional reaction around me.
Mhm.
So, do you have anything that you do, even if you're feeling really good and healthy, but just emotionally everything seems to collide at the same time?
Yeah. Many things to say on this. Now we're in the day part of our routine, right? We talked about morning and evening. We're in the crux of it, the flow of it. I think accepting a couple things. energy that flows in the natural world is in varied patterns constantly. There is going to be times where there are smooth seasons. There are going to be times when there are rough seasons. So first off, having the understanding of just accepting that baseline, not in no disharmony to that, understanding that's a part of the flow and it's all welcome, is the backdrop framework for healing, which means accepting your own shadow emotions and the burst of anger that there's part of you would judge as not spiritual, but part of you is like, well, this is happening right now and it's all good. What we're doing is we're removing layers of conflict. So it's like all of this is welcome. At the same time, you have this heart that is striving for, I guess, better in the sense of like a more embodiment of the stuff that you want. And then also becoming patient. Like this is a process for our entire lifetimes. This is not like a goal to be accomplished at any set time. This is like constant being. Now, a little more practical, I think throughout our days, we could take time to create more spaciousness to like decompress. I think in systems like, okay, let's go to a little like physics and mechanical,
Mhm.
like we have a spring, like a piston, a spring. I think we're pressurizing
Yes.
and then we're releasing and we're pressurizing and we're releasing. These are phases of the motion cycle. And so we need to do the same exact thing in our life design. There are times when we must pressurize and focus and release. So on a daily basis, this could be like meetings scheduled with spaciousness, with meetings and spaciousness. And what we'll find when we feel out of balance is we had too many things perhaps in the pressure cycle with not enough release. But it's part of the variety of the day. There'll be days and times that you have that naturally. You have big work engagements, kids have sports now. Now you have to make dinner and then this. And if you look at the week ahead and you can almost accept, oh, this is going to be a big high pressure time. I see this. I'm moving into this type of flow. And so you can be tactical in your design and building more release on the back end of it. I think when people are not conscious enough to start to look at these different waves of like crunches and releases, then you're just merged into what's happening without having the deeper awareness of the cycles that you're moving through. Was that a little too esoteric? Did that make sense?
No, it makes complete sense, especially when you think about it from that spring perspective, right? You talk about tightly wound. You hear people say that,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're so tightly wound. Eventually, if you keep pressuring everything in and you don't give yourself breaks in a
Mm-hmm.
schedule, you're going to
Mm-hmm.
break. You're going to spring out and
Mm-hmm.
everything's just going to break apart.
Yes,
But there's even beauty in that if you're willing to look at it,
for sure.
right?
If you
Because
learn.
if you're willing to learn from it, and that's the beauty of what you're saying. It's like, fine, even if you don't and everything bursts apart,
Mm-hmm.
there's purpose in that. It's showing you that your cycle didn't fit for you, it didn't work. So,
Yes.
how do you pull from that and not do that again?
Right?
Right?
It's the beautiful gift of things exploding. I've learned the most in my life from those different times and phases. The other thing, if we keep the spring analogy, is kind of fun,
Yeah, I love the spring
is
analogy.
there's some springs that have both strength and durability, and others that could have strength, but they're a little more brittle. They're not designed in with the right amount of relaxation and tension. You can imagine something that works for a little bit, but it's so tight that it eventually like breaks. This is now the presence that we bring into every moment, not just the logistics and the schedule of pressure contraction cycles, but like presence. There are those who are earlier in their spiritual unfoldment path that still carry and create a lot of attachments to a lot of stuff. And there's others that if you've gone deeper and you've released and let go of more things, that you can kind of move through a minefield and barely take on anything. And so it's not just like the load we're presented with, it's also how we carry it. I have not, this is not a huge part, but what just came to my awareness is like kind of like the four agreements type stuff. It's like,
Yeah.
and I don't know them exactly, but one of them like stop taking things personally, like these kinds of concepts of like how we can just carry less as we go throughout the day, which I would say is one, trust. Trust is probably like the foundational operation. The way the spring operates best is trust. Trust that all that you're experiencing is there for a reason, for your benefit, and that it's all going to go okay. And that doesn't mean it's going to work out exactly as you want because you have the flexible and fluidity to move, but like that it's all going to be okay, which means you're at the center heart of love, of knowing that like you're a part of this love dance that's unfolding and it is good. So without that trust background, which you feel is fear and anxiety on some level, and that is probably the background energy that can zap the spring the most. That low grade fear and anxiety that it might not be okay, that you're not fundamentally supported, these kinds of things. Now, how to get into a heart that is actually filled with trust, this is what your work is, doing with people, and it's deep. But I just am saying that the background character of like the trust and the faith and the love and the goodness is what makes every load easier to carry. Some shit blows up in your business. Oh, like, okay, I trust that something good is going to come from this,
I'll
or
spring back.
I'll spring back. Yeah,
Yeah.
like it's okay. It's acceptance. But otherwise, everything could be seen as an emergency and kind of catastrophic.
Yeah.
Or your kids, that this is something that you need to control all the things that they're doing, which you inherently can't. And there's a lot of anxiety that could come from that.
Yes. That's huge. I also, for me, part of springing back, the friendship with you and with others that can help see a cycle that
Hmm.
maybe I'm not seeing for
Hmm.
myself
Hmm.
has been so imperative in my heart leader journey. There have been times where, we all get imposter syndrome sometimes,
Yeah.
right? And I know that that's a common theme, but when you have people that you can turn to and say, hey, this is what I'm feeling, and this is why my spring feels a little coiled.
Hmm.
What is your view and what is your perspective?
Yeah.
Just to have someone that can take the outside view of, is that too, are you too compressed or too compacted right now?
Yes.
Or are you seeing things
Hmm.
accurately from the inside?
Yeah.
I think gives so much
It's healing.
support
Yeah.
and, yeah, healing and acceptance of self and where you are on your journey. Because we're community heart centered beings, and that heart coherence gives you such a different view when you see it from another.
Completely agree. And this,
Mm.
what I'm going to share next is not, it's in the same constellation of like, how do we make the spring work better long term? Like, how does it carry the load?
Uh-huh.
One simple thing is like, from a health and physical body standpoint, is the best operating system for carrying loads over a long period of time is the parasympathetic nervous system. The relaxed, rested, digested, open circulation, able to respond and not react. The sympathetic nervous system is the short burst, immediate now, like typically physical danger from the body from times past, but not the operating system that you can ever use sustainably. And it's how our culture is completely rooted in the sympathetic, hands down, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even from what we do as our morning ritual culturally to get through the demands of our day, is we all take caffeine, or many of us, I guess I should say. And that initiates a cascade of sympathetic dominance that we then carry into reactive technology patterns, which, I did a brainwave training in Sedona, 7 days. They hook your brain up to electrodes, and they were training you from biofeedback to get a alpha waves, which would be an operating system that a lot of people would be in. It's relaxed, it's present, it's happy, it's creative, it's connected. What destroys alpha waves? Caffeine, nicotine, interestingly, garlic and onions. But point being is, even there's a physiologic basis to why we're not managing this well. So all the things that people are raving about now, the benefits of exercise or cold plunging or sauna or this magnesium supplement or this PEMF bed, all these things are effectively helping to regulate the nervous system and oftentimes moving people out of sympathetic into a parasympathetic dominance. And then they can handle so much more.
Yeah.
So I'm just bringing this up because I know there's someone listening to this right now who actually probably has a physiologic mismanagement that's making their mind chattery and making them harder for them to do the same load. And they actually understand the spiritual concepts. They're just creating an environment where the body is like responding in a way that's contrary to what they actually want.
Yeah. And that is so challenging when there's so much noise in your body that you
Hmm.
can't do anything else.
Yeah. Like when I'm dysregulated, if I had a big meal of a bunch of food that I shouldn't eat late at night and I try to sit and meditate, yeah, right. I mean, my meditation experience would be sitting in the feeling of dis-ease, chattery mind, hot, uncomfortable, and agitated. And yeah, there's some value in that. But it's a lot more joyful to go through this life experience when you're feeling all of the other things: light, clear, clean, creative, pure, whatever.
Yes. And then so much easier to navigate the wave when all these things collide
Yeah.
in your life. All the hats that you're wearing suddenly pile up on your head at once
Yeah.
versus thinking, they're going to happen one after the other.
Yeah.
It rarely happens that way
Totally.
anyway.
Yeah. And a couple other things based on this, like, how do you manage it? One, I think I realize in my pattern and habit that at least once a month, I need at least a couple days, but ideally it'd be really cool to have a weekend where I can really get into something that's deeply nourishing and connected for me. And maybe it's even one day, but like I need a solo by myself, not around anyone, like self-care time baked into my schedules and rhythms. So that's necessary for the battery recharge. Everyone's got their own personality and disposition, so it might look different, but I think intentionally scheduling that stuff in is necessary if you're trying to spin a lot of different plates and you're engaging in business where you're scheduling meetings and engagements and things and this and that. You need to have the personal restoration schedule baked in and then have the awareness of like what actually nourishes me. So I think a lot of people spend their free time doing stuff that is not actually really restorative or that they feel like they should do but might not actually really nourish them. But if they did what they really like, for someone, it might be like getting a hotel room away from your family and reading books for an entire day. Like that could be way better than what you've done. And, I'm throwing things out there, but
Oh, yeah.
options.
And some people might not know actually what fuels them or restores them.
Hmm.
And so part of the journey is being willing to explore it,
Yeah.
right?
I'll say start with nature. I'm telling you, like it's in our natural design to be excited in love, a blue sky with green, healthy electromagnetic fields from hydrated plants and the chirping sound of birds. There's not a single human that doesn't like that experience.
Yeah. Not that I've met anyway.
Yeah.
And you can find nature anywhere. Even like one of my most favorite places to go is in New York, Central Park. It is crazy how just calm
Hmm.
that place is in the center of a city that is anything but calm.
Yeah.
So if you can find calm nature in the center of chaos like that, then you can connect with nature pretty much anywhere.
Yeah. Well, good point. And something I'll add, and I'm definitely not perfect in this, but I do think this is like a metric of my life success is catching more sunrises and sunsets. And maybe even ideally, like it'd be cool every day that it allows, because this keeps you fundamentally connected to the broader cycles of nature. And as we're going to see, one of the big health fields is going to be light, light's impact on the body on many, many levels. And there is health benefit to seeing the sunrise and sunset colors, receiving the infrared, like going through the process of the natural light cascade of the day. And it also weaves in these perfect endpoints for presence and stillness and decompression. So it's all a spring. It's all a spring. Nature has its own geometry of a spring. Our lives have their own, and we're trying to align these in more harmonious movement is effectively what we're doing. And the more that you do that, your capacity is higher to do more. And then you have the experience of discernment on what actually serves me is more what I need, but at least your capacity is a lot higher.
Yeah. And I love that you bring up the sunrise and the sunset because I think of it as I get to wake up and inhale with the sunrise, and then I get to exhale and relax with the sunset.
So perfect.
It's like that perfect circadian flow,
It's a
right?
spring,
It is the
two
spring.
phases. Hmm.
Mhm. And with that, you talk about the circadian impact on the body. Can you dive deeper into that?
Sure.
Like, why is that so important? And why have we lost touch with it?
Yeah, I think we went through a massive technological explosion over the last couple hundred years, from all the things, telecommunications, inventing engines, and now phones. And the human, as we know, and we look out into maybe the quote unquote bad things we see in cultures and nations, we can throw a lot of energy at something boneheadedly for a long time and create a lot of like damage or just like for the sake of innovation. Like we want to move forward. Like, why do we want to strive and reach the moon? What I'm trying to say is like, We progress through technology without understanding the implications of how far we've removed ourselves from the natural cycles of light, outside movement, etc. We made light bulbs because we could. Then we could light up buildings and work longer. And then we eventually, all the things that comes from that, we get the cell phone and chat GPT, the emergence of all that. So I think it was almost like well-intentioned human spirit for innovation going into technology. And now we're kind of seeing that we've really damaged ourselves. We've damaged ourselves in the sense that if you want to understand health in the human body at a deep level, you need to first like look at the earth and look at the cycles of the earth, the elements of the earth. Our bones and our enzymes require the very minerals that are in the crust of the earth that the plants and the animals suck up. Insofar as what we consume, we get. Like we are built from the metals of the earth. We are 70% water. Earth is too. Like we have this element of water. And then light is the signal from the great sun we have that nourishes everything on this planet. Everything's inherently connected to the sun in some way, shape, or form, and us very, very directly. Our eyes, which we primarily use as a sense to navigate, is constantly sensing the amount of light in the environment. And this controls the hormones that the brain is releasing, right? So
Mhm.
phenomenal. And what light should we have? Well, what time of day is it? And what light naturally comes from the sun at that time? Oh, in the morning, infrared, visible light. Oh, midday, UVB, which is also what produces vitamin D. Oh, at night, all the blue light's gone. And now we have these red and these orange tones of sunset. So, like, the answer is just to completely align yourself to the sun's natural light signal. And unfortunately, we didn't recognize how deep that was. And we just didn't have the scientific understanding to measure the brain, know all the different neurohormones that respond to the light, but we get it now. But it's almost a little too late for many people. I'm not saying too late. That's the wrong word because it's certainly not too late. But everywhere now, we have a bunch of artificial LEDs kicking off wrong light signatures at wrong times. People listening to this in their house probably have like the wrong lights in their bathroom that are giving off improper signals. And so it's basically a stress for our bodies and our brains because we're giving a incorrect light signal at a poor circadian time, and everything downstream is not going to work well from that. Light is not the only aspect of health, but it is one very big trigger for the body.
And it impacts sleep.
Oh, massively. I mean, melatonin, right,
Right.
is well, first off, it's melatonin is produced more preferentially when you get morning sunshine. So it's like the two phases, like you load up in the sun in the morning. Well, here's the cool story. Let's talk a little more about light from a medical standpoint. So
But
the sun's rays that are emitted might be around 40 or 50% infrared light. And we see all these people selling infrared lamps now. It's very, very good for us. Based on the sun's orientation in the morning, there's very little UV that we get through the atmosphere. And it's the morning infrared that hits our skin that actually wakes up our skin cells and our melanin and conditions us to not burn later in the day. If we don't get that, we don't go through this daily cycle that our skin goes through to get us ready for midday sun exposure. The UVB, there's UVA and UVB and C, but we really get A and B. The UVB at 295 nanometers, very specifically, is the best wavelength for producing vitamin D.
mhm.
And if we look at just what happened over the last couple of years with all the viruses and stuff going around, one of the main factors to differentiate your outcome success is your vitamin D status. It is probably one of the most important things you can optimize for health. We make it from the UVB. So if that's the way we make vitamin D from UVB, it kind of like I'm a natural law guy. Oh, we're supposed to get a dose of midday sunshine. We no longer do this, but ideally, and it depends seasonally and where you live as well, we get full body sun exposure sometime when the UVB is highest in the middle of the day. And if you actually have measuring devices like I do to measure this different exposure of spectrums, basically around 4, 5, 6 o'clock when the sun's setting, there is no more UV. So there's like this powerful window of time that you move through. We get more infrared at light. The sky, when it's no longer blue, is the perfect time to be cutting the blue lights in your office. But I want people to understand that like blue light is not bad. It is the natural light that is reflected from our atmosphere into our eyes. We perceive the sky as blue. It is energizing. We just don't want it out of balance.
Right.
Yeah, and there's a lot more to be said about the whole light experience. Red lights are great. Infrared is good. You want to be, first off, harmonize your light signatures to where the sun naturally moves through. And then you can play with different spectrums of light for health optimization. Red light and infrared panels are great for skin, anti-aging, mitochondria. There's a lot of benefits to boosting light, but first get yourself circadian balanced. There's some docs that believe that a lot of the ADHD and a lot of the behavioral stuff with kids today is because they're just jacked up on the wrong light signatures. And it's so damaging to the brain to be in a non-native light signature, like a developing brain that's getting the wrong signals of where the sun is. Like that's as freaking fundamental as everything. Like kids are resilient to inflammation. They could be eating like Cheerios, but if they're getting like good sleep and circadian rhythm thing, they can thrive. But like light is deeper because the wrong light at the wrong time so fundamentally affects the brain. The eyes are an extension of the brain that you can't recover from that kind of damage. There is damage that happens when the light is not correct.
Yeah. Well, given that conversation and the infrared and the time of day that the sun actually emits it, if someone is using an infrared light from a
Mhm.
lamp, is there a time of day that is preference that would be best to use that lamp?
Biocompatibly around sunrise or sunset.
Okay.
But my take is anytime you can get infrared is still valuable because you're getting infrared constantly from the sun. From a standpoint of like effects, doing light therapies post exercise, if you have the ability to, augments the exercise effect. Like red light and infrared is almost like an exercise mimetic. It gives your body, if you go long enough of that kind of signal. But basically, anytime on the infrared would be fine. Um, People need to get more midday sun exposure, in my opinion. Like more UVB, more full body skin, be very helpful because the vitamin D supplementation is good, and eating high vitamin D foods is good. But if you think that our skin just makes vitamin D from sun exposure, you crazy. We make 70 different compounds from natural sun exposure that we don't get just through supplemental form. Health is about aligning yourself closer to natural rhythm. Modern society is deviating us pretty substantially from natural rhythm. We have a society in the future where natural rhythm is woven into the way we work and the way we live. That's what you're here to create. And I'm playing my part too. Like that can happen. But right now we're at the part of the spring cycle where we're experiencing massive pain from deviation that's going to turn us back around through conversations like
Yes.
this and through homes. And one more thing I'm passionate about is I run Fit Father and Fit Mother. Like I believe that families are kind of like the cells of the organism. And like cells are cool because in your body, not all your cells are healthy right now. There are some cells that are throwing out inflammatory mediators. There are some cells you have that are senescent and like old and not doing great. And there's some cells that are vibrant and popping with energy. Like the way the body gets healthier is there's more healthy cells and less of the inflammatory senescent signals. Like this is literally how it works. And this is also how we make change like culturally. We start getting healthier people who butt into healthier families and spheres of influence. And they're putting off the good kind of chemical messages that encourages more health from neighboring cells. And now we have math, generative math on our equation where goodness is begetting more goodness and health. So that's why the work I do, I think, is particularly special. Fathers and mothers and families, like that is a big amplifier, or at least it can be.
I agree. And being able to share that, yes, the sun is so important and the circadian rhythm is so important and health is so important, but nature, just by and large, is so important as well.
We derive from it.
Yeah, the amount of oxygen that we soak in just through our skin, our lungs as well, but just through our
Yeah.
skin by being in nature. We we've lost sight of so much of that. And then when you can have your family in nature with you and that heart coherence from family, so now you've got love and nature
Mhm.
and it's profound the
Yes.
impact
And
and the difference.
we've moved away from our connection to the land. We live in the world of like Amazon dropping off your groceries and your packages, where maybe a couple hundred years ago you had a family garden and
Mhm.
people were touching the soil, and maybe you had animals. Like, and I'm not saying we like need to go back there, although I do think there's a lot of the experience of power and sovereignty when people get closer to their food inputs. And that could be as simple as actually just even buying more local or connecting more to those kinds of things. There's health benefits from that too.
Yeah.
But that's just part of the symptom of the disconnection, right? We're no longer connected to the place through which we get our food. And we're no longer working in a way that our sustenance involved working with the land. Now it's information metaverse work. It's information work. It's cerebral work. It's less physical and visceral. For better or
Yes.
for worse, that has created part of the disconnection.
Which created part of the disconnection from here,
Yes, which
from our
also is
heart.
why we trash the planet too.
Yes. Yeah. I Nothing more that can be said other than that. I mean, when you poll so many Americans and they have no idea where their meat is sourced,
Mhm.
that lets you know it doesn't just show up in the grocery store. It comes from somewhere, right?
Mhm.
And we've got to get back to a point where we're more connected to what we're putting in our bodies because our bodies are what house our soul.
Mhm.
However, you want to look at that, however, you're experiencing this world,
Yep.
your body is what's carrying you through that
It's the vehicle.
experience.
Mhm.
And if you don't know where what you're putting in it came from, that might be your first place to start.
For sure. And if we're understanding this body mind connection, like the body is like soil that helps create a healthy, thriving, happy mental, emotional space, this could and should be one of our primary focuses. Like, insofar as you're deep into the metaphysics of spiritual work, you are probably just as passionate about health in your body and your routines, like, because it's the same thing. You're
Yeah,
just playing in the physicality of it.
exactly. And down to that cellular level that you're talking about, every cell has its own vibration, has its own frequency.
Hmm.
And when you're talking about that resonance and that health at that resonance level, then even the ones that are dying off have a purpose and their death cycle, just
Yes.
like the death of a human,
Yes.
right? And so, what am I going to do as the cells in my body are dying off? Do I allow that death to impact the other cells in my body?
Yeah.
How do I counteract that? And how do I be consciously aware? We'll go back to the heart leader, right? As a conscious heart leader, not only being a heart leader of those around me and of myself, but also with my body.
Hmm.
How do I let that impact my body? Do I let it then create an infection that will
Hmm.
create more disharmony in my body, that then will create more disharmony in myself, that will create more disharmony around the other people?
Hmm.
Or do I look inward and say, no, I've got something going on here? Whether it's I can tell that I have something that doesn't seem right in my body and I can sit with that and
Hmm.
understand it. And there's quiet times at night when I'm winding down and feel into it and say, okay, what does my body need? My body will
Hmm.
talk to me if I listen
Yeah,
and do something about
for
it.
sure.
Change that up. More sunlight, more nutrition, more something,
Yeah,
right? Or call people.
for sure. That's a nice place to go in this. Our bodies are so cool in that they're part of the decay cycle. Like, that's the law of nature. Like, things have pattern in their genetics and their design. They express, they reach a peak, then they come to a decline. The planet and the sun are on those same cycles. Our bodies are governed by that law too. And that's, I think, where the back half of life can give you a lot of spiritual growth, because you have accumulated a lot of experience and often a lot of responsibility, a lot of pain, and sometimes a lot of joy. And then you have this body that you still like have this natural desire for it to express vitality at its stage. But you also have to have this grace of acceptance of some limitations coming in, and like what that shows you about your attachments and releasing those and knowing yourself deeper. So I think if like a really healthy human culture would like revere that back part of life. I mean, just think about that. If we, and I come to tears because like how beautiful would that be if our most respected part of our culture was seeing like healthy people live out their end. It would be completely different. We have a utility based culture right now where your peak is your usefulness to work or to create value or to have sexual virility or how jacked you are. Just look at the fitness industry. Like, we've decided that the peak is at this point, versus understanding this whole beautiful dance of how we age and how we let go at the end. It's awesome. And it's not to say you don't like let go. It's the dance of, it's not weakness. It's actually like strength and acceptance of every stage. And you can still be a badass in your 70s and your 80s with proper fitness. In fact, I would say, like, with the right elements in place for a long time, the human body can be crushing it at whatever exercise or workouts you want to do, even into your 90s. Genetics are a factor, but there are living people today. And I think the human lifespan, like unadulterated with the right circumstances, is biblical, like far longer than we're living now, so
I agree. We consistently say aging is a privilege, not a problem. And right now, culturally, we act as though it's a problem. And I love your take on it. It is such a privilege to be able to experience yourself at all of these stages,
yeah.
all of these layers, all these level ups, if you want to
Hmm.
look at it. Every decade is like a level up. You
Yeah.
learn so much about yourself.
Yeah.
And so if you get to this stage where you're like 60, 70, 80, you've got all that experience and all that heart centered nurturing that you've been able to accumulate that you can share with others if they're willing or desire to learn
Hmm.
from it.
Yes,
So,
that would be the sage part of life, where
yeah.
there's a transmission that helps feed. But I'm gonna be honest, I think without physical health, we experience everything we're experiencing now, which is people taking care of aging parents
Yes.
who are sick, who are losing their minds, who are on medications, operations, they're not self-sufficient. That is actually a drain and a parasite in a sense on life energy. If all those people, you can snap your fingers and they're healthy and they're sharp and they're vibrant, like the whole culture and society changes. Generational wealth changes, like family stress changes, and like it is a real important thing, because what is happening to people at the end of life is a byproduct of their lifestyle, but it wasn't all their fault. Like there's a lot of industries that propped up to get here, pharma, food, etc. But like they're reaping the consequences of what happened over the last 20, 30 years. And
Yeah.
so like with good health, all that works. With poor health, like you just become more sick as you age. Your likelihood of getting any of the chronic diseases is basically guaranteed, and it becomes a burden on you and on your family. So it's like the only way to have a healthy civilization is to have healthy people, ideally at almost every stage of life, which would mean we would need to change fundamentally the baseline food system that's available and the culture and approach to that. And we need to find a way to weave movement into our daily lives constantly. So,
So let's do it.
right. Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Well, I think our time is up. I could keep talking to you for hours, which is why we have to just keep having you back every year. I think it has to be an annual thing at least. So we're wrapping up the year with you, and you do have Fit Father, Fit Mother. If individuals would like to look you up to learn more about how they can start with their body, if that's their first move as a heart leader, how do they find you? How do they
Yeah.
get a hold of you?
Well, you can either go to fitfather.com
Uh-huh.
or fitmother.com, or just Google Fit Father or Fit Mother and Anthony. It'll come up. For January, it's a special time because we do recognize it's a chance that many people use as a container for commitment and new initiation energy. And we offer experiences to help people get on track. We have great 6-week intro programs, and we basically get you up on your sustainable nutrition routine, regular exercise, the community environment support, and like build a ton of momentum. So those will be on our websites. We'd love for anyone to experience what we do on the back end, which this conversation was powerful because we covered a lot of ground for sure. There was deep philosophy, I think heart leadership on display, but it wasn't like deeply tactical, which is what people also need with their health. Like here is a
Yes.
eating plan. Here is a rep by rep, step by step, follow along workout to do. Oh, here's a journaling exercise to do to really uncover your deep motivation. So it's like if you want to like do the work on fitness and make a deep change, this is what we do.
That's awesome. And you have a community, right? So individuals feel supported.
Yeah, I mean over 70,000 people, like, and in micro communities within communities. But yes, across Fit Father and Fit Mother, it is like you join a tribe of people who are all putting health at the center of their family values, working the plan themselves, really changing, embodying that change, and then seeing what happens to the rest of their family.
And that's so important because when you do hit those moments, like we discussed, where you feel overwhelmed and you don't know what to do, you can reach out to your community and they'll be there to help you and prop you up,
It's
which
environment.
that brings tears to my eyes because I know how important that is, especially to the people who listen to this. That's why they're here is they're seeking that community. And then they'll get that again as they reach out to your community
Yeah.
and they don't feel like they're doing this by themselves.
100%. Yeah, it's the best
So,
part. We're doing it together. It's all
yeah,
together. It's all relationship.
it really is. So, well, thank you for being
Thank you.
here and being in this relationship. And thank you all for joining us as well. Again, Dr. Anthony Balduzzi, if you want to look him up, Fit Mother, Fit Father projects. There are so many people who have just felt this success going through his programs. And the best part is he and his team are very dedicated from that heart-centered, heart leadership standpoint. So I definitely recommend checking it out. We are just so grateful you're here with us on the Heart Leader podcast. We have a lot of other wonderful podcasts that you can check out. So take a moment right now and head on over and do that.